The Light from Nowhere. Chapter 1, The Village in the Valley. In the remote valley of Hemapur, nestled between two towering mountain ranges, there was a village untouched by modernity. The people of Hemapur lived simple lives, relying on farming, weaving, and storytelling for entertainment. It was a place where life seemed to stand still, a relic of an older time. But Hemapur was not without its mysteries. Generations had passed down tales of the light from nowhere. The stories told of an ethereal glow that would appear in the valley every 100 years, always on the night of the winter solstice. The light was described as soft yet powerful, emerging out of the air itself. No lanterns, no fires, no source. Those who had seen it described it as otherworldly, leaving them changed forever. Some said it was a divine blessing. Others called it a curse. The elders spoke of the light with reverence, warning the young ones to stay indoors if it ever appeared. "It chooses who it wants," they would whisper. But as decades passed without any sign of the mysterious phenomenon, most villagers dismissed the tales as nothing more than folklore. Chapter 2. The Stranger. As the village prepared for another winter, a stranger arrived in Hemapur. He called himself Raghav, a traveler and researcher from the city. With his weathered notebook, a camera slung around his neck, and an air of quiet curiosity, he told the villagers he had come to study their folklore. The elders were suspicious. Why would an outsider care about their stories? But the younger generation was fascinated by Raghav's tales of the outside world. Raghav set up his small tent on the outskirts of the village, just near the edge of the valley. Every day he spoke to the villagers, collecting their versions of the light from nowhere. He pored over dusty family manuscripts and questioned the oldest residents. To his surprise, there were detailed drawings and writings describing the light from hundreds of years ago, eerily consistent despite the passage of time. One evening, as Raghav sat by his campfire, an elderly man named Bhairav approached him. His back was hunched with age and his voice trembled as he spoke. "You are looking for the light, aren't you?" Bhairav asked. Raghav nodded. "I think it may be some natural phenomenon, a reflection of starlight, or perhaps something scientific we've yet to understand." Bhairav's wrinkled face broke into a sad smile. "It is neither science nor nature, but you will see for yourself soon." And with that cryptic response, Bhairav turned and disappeared into the night. Chapter 3. The Solstice Night. The night of the winter solstice arrived, cold and silent. The sky above Hemapur was cloudless, and the stars glistened with a clarity one could never see in the cities. Raghav had stayed up late, his camera set to capture any sign of the mysterious light. Around midnight, the air changed. A strange stillness fell over the valley, as though nature itself was holding its breath. Raghav stood up, his heart racing as a faint glow began to appear in the distance. It started small, like a mist, only luminous, and then grew brighter, spreading across the valley floor. It was unlike anything Raghav had seen before. Not a fire, not a beam of light, but an illumination that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. He picked up his camera, frantically taking photos, but the device malfunctioned. No matter how much he tried, the camera refused to capture the glow. Frustrated, Raghav stepped forward, closer to the phenomenon. Suddenly the light shifted. It moved, not like a beam of light, but like a living entity, rising slowly into the air. And then it spoke, not with sound, but directly into Raghav's mind. "You seek answers, but answers have no form here." Raghav froze. What? What are you?" "We are beyond name, beyond time. We are the space between moments, the light between shadows. You are here because you chose to see." Raghav's thoughts spun. "Why me? Why does it appear here?" "This valley is a doorway," the voice replied. "Long ago, your kind and ours were one. Now we are separate, but on this night the doorway opens. We are not your gods, nor your demons. We simply are." The light swirled around Raghav, lifting him gently off the ground. His body felt weightless, as though he had become part of the light itself. Memories flooded his mind, scenes of ancient civilizations, of stars being born, of a time before humans had names for things. It was as though the light was showing him the true nature of existence, infinite, beautiful, and unknowable. Chapter 4. The Return. When Raghav woke up, he was lying in the valley, the first rays of sunlight warming his face. The light was gone, and the world had returned to normal. His camera lay beside him, its battery drained. Raghav stumbled back to the village, where the villagers stared at him in awe. Bhairav was waiting for him, a knowing look in his ancient eyes. "You saw it, didn't you?" Raghav nodded, unable to find words. He felt different. His mind was sharper, his body lighter, as though the light had left a part of itself within him. He stayed in the village for a few more days, trying to put his experience into words. But how could he? It was like trying to describe the color of the wind or the taste of time. The villagers, seeing his distant gaze and the calm that now surrounded him, began to believe the old stories once more. Chapter 5. 100 Years Later. Years passed. Raghav returned to the city and published his findings, but no one believed him. The photographs he had taken were blank, and the scientific community dismissed his claims as fantasy. Eventually, he disappeared from public life, becoming nothing more than a curious footnote in obscure journals. But back in Hemapur, the legend of the light from nowhere lived on. The villagers spoke of Raghav as the chosen one, the man who had been touched by the light. And on the night of the winter solstice, 100 years later, the light returned. This time it chose another, perhaps a child, perhaps an elder. The cycle continued as it always had, leaving behind more questions than answers. For the light was eternal. It needed no explanation, no worship. It simply was. And for those who saw it, the world would never look the same again.